Hi, I'm Liz Hirsh-Naftali. Welcome to Season 2 of the Capital Coffee Connection podcast. And I am very excited because today, as my guest, I have New Jersey Governor Phil Murphy. And one of the things about this podcast is that we are going to talk about heart, humanity, and home. And we're staying away from politics and policy because what I have learned and I believe is that we need to have conversations with people on both sides of the aisle and really just to get to know them for their character, their humanity, not to let politics and policy sometimes get in our way. So anyhow, I want to welcome you, Phil, and thank you for coming here today. We normally have coffee in person, so I'm going to have a tea here, and I hope you have something, but I owe you a cup of coffee in person.
That's a deal. Great to be here, Liz. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much. So one of the things that I was thinking about when I was preparing was that you're kind of a modern Renaissance person. You know, you're the New Jersey governor, you were U.S. ambassador to Germany, you were a leader at Goldman Sachs for many years, you're a radio host, you've been on boards of nonprofits, volunteering, and most important, you're a husband and a father. And through all that, you generally have a really good sense of humor. And so before we start, I just wanted to give you 3 adjectives. I was thinking about 3 adjectives that I thought were really good for you. And one is empathetic, second is pragmatic, and third is charismatic.
Wow.
So as we talked, I would love your thoughts on those, but I think people are going to get to see that maybe I am kind of close on those.
Oh, I love that.
So thank you. And before we start, about you, I want to know a little bit about New Jersey. You know, I have New Jersey in my background here. I turned my camera today to get you some of the Jersey background. And I would love for you to tell us just a little bit for people across the world who are listening, what's special about New Jersey and why is it called the Garden State?
I love that. First of all, Liz, thank you for having me. I looked up my timetable, and you and I have known each other now for just going on 19 years. We met 2006.
Wow.
And my wife is also a dear friend of Liz's, so the Murphy family is thrilled to have a friend like you, and I'm thrilled to be on this podcast. And I'm flattered by your 3 adjectives. Those are all words my mother used to say, you're known by the company you keep. Those are 3 good words whose company I'd love to keep. So New Jersey, when I pitch the state, I start with 2 words, talent and location. On talent, we have the #1 public education system in America. We have the highest concentration of scientists and engineers per square mile of anywhere in the world. We're an innovation economy. We're also a huge art and performing state. We are the talent state in that respect as well. So talent is in diversity, I would say, within the rubric of talent, we are by many measures the most diverse American state, and we wear that as a badge of honor. And on location, we sit right in the Northeast corridor, right between New York and Philadelphia. We have the first or second largest port in the world, great air connections. 20% of the nation's GDP is either from Jersey or goes through Jersey every day. So those 2 words, I think, capture the state the best. And then lastly, Liz, I'd say every state has a bumper sticker. You know, some states, no state taxes, warm weather, live free or die in New Hampshire. Ours is the #1 state in America to raise a family. It's an incredible state. We actually moved here to raise our 4 kids. So a lot of people are born in places and they don't have a whole lot of choices to where they got born. Tammy and I made the conscious, proactive decision to move to New Jersey to raise our 4 kids, which is the best decision we ever made. So I could go on, but I'll take a breath.
Yeah. So why is it called the Garden State? Because of the
Garden State used to be a big, sorry, I forgot that part.
Yeah.
Big agrarian state, and it was sort of the breadbasket of the early colonies in the early days of our country's history. And we still, in certain parts of the state, especially the southern part of the state, continues to be a big agrarian economy. Obviously, in the densely populated parts of the state, that's in the rear view mirror. New Jersey played it, and we're really hitting this hard in the next year and a half, played an undertold, existentially important role in the American Revolution. Boston and Massachusetts, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, certainly Washington, D.C., tend to get a lot of the airtime on the early days of the war, and they deserve it. But more battles were fought in New Jersey than in any other state. And that's something that we're trying to crystallize and put out there in stark relief over the next year and a half.
Well, you just put it out here, and we're going to share that with everyone. So that's great. Thank you for sharing that. So you said about like raising a family. I'd love to know a little bit about your family growing up, and then we'll transfer into your family now, and just a little bit about your family, your parents, and I'm sure that a lot of who you are today comes from growing up in a household. So could you talk about what it was like to grow up and where you lived?
Absolutely. Born in Boston proper, grew up in the suburbs of Boston. Dad did not get out of high school. Mom got a high school degree, and that was it for her. Middle class on a good day. I'm the youngest of four, boy, girl, boy. My big brother sadly passed away several decades ago. The family mostly still lives up in the Boston area. I had the great fortune to go to Harvard College and then got an MBA at Wharton and ultimately moved on from Massachusetts, but I can't say enough good things about growing up there. I still root for all the sports teams up there, which gets me no votes in New Jersey. Let me just say that.
Say that's a good one. That keeps her to fight,
I love it. And I would say my dad was the person who cared deeply, brilliant guy, even though he wasn't educated. He cared deeply about public service and politics. Mom was the one to make sure that, unlike them, the four of us got a college degree. And it was a classic Kennedy, Irish, Catholic, suburban Massachusetts family. Again, middle class on a good day. We were sort of one paycheck or two away from meltdown all those years, but a happy family. And as you rightfully said, so much of that upbringing is a part of who I am today and how I think about public service, how I think about my responsibility as governor, etc.
In high school, did you have a special teacher? I've asked many people, many leaders, if there was a special teacher or person in their high school experience who actually mentored them or inspired them.
I'll give you two. A high school English teacher, Mr. Allen, who had polio as a kid. He was sucked into the early 50s polio reality and was a guy who basically said, most teachers would give you an A for this, Phil, but you know what? You're better than that. I'm going to give you whatever grade he gave me, and then aggressively would mark up my papers and made me a much better writer and made me a little bit of a grammar policeman, which I remain so today. The other one was a guy named Mr. Darducci, who just passed away a couple of years ago. I was an actor in middle school, high school, and college, mostly musical comedy. And he was sort of the music director at our high school. And he was a huge positive influence on me as well.
Yeah, well, both of them sound like they believed in you. They saw you and they saw your potential and they probably pushed you and they figured if they just let you pass, that wasn't going to be good enough for you for your future.
Amen.
Yeah. So going from your family growing up to your family now, I know from listening to you and from conversations when you have them that the first thing you always do is introduce, thank, and appreciate your wife. And I know that Tammy and you are partners. It's not like she's the wife. She's your partner. She's been there with you this whole way. Why is she doing so much? Like, where is her power and why is it so important for what you've been able to accomplish?
I mean, she's extraordinary in that regard, without any hesitation. I'm the luckiest guy on the planet. We've been married going on 31 years. This is a kind of a fun story. We knew each other 7 years before we went on a date. When we went on a date, we were engaged in 18 days. So wow. When we finally got around to it, we didn't let any grass grow. She's a great mom, most importantly. We've got 4 kids. They're 27, 25, 23, and 21. And that's number one. She's an extraordinary mom. But she is a full-time volunteer for the state of New Jersey.
Yeah.
She works as much as I do, doesn't get paid a penny. She did the same thing when I was our ambassador in Germany, in Berlin. And her passions are infant and maternal health where New Jersey's becoming a nation leader, climate and the environment, and education. Those are her big three passions. And then fourthly, she's like I am, a recovering banker. She's got economic development in her bones, and she's been hugely important, especially as we have built out the film and television business. In baseball, there's a phrase, when you can do it all, you're called a five-tool athlete. Tammy is a five-tool athlete, doesn't get remotely the credit she deserves, but I don't know where I'd be either personally or professionally without her.
Yeah, no, I like that 5 tool. I'm going to use that one. But I have a question. Like, when you were ambassador, you took your kids across the world. And obviously that was a wonderful experience, but was it challenging for them? Like, was that just something, or do they look back now, because obviously they're in their 20s, and think, wow, that was an incredible opportunity to live in another country?
Great question. Largely glass very much half full. They were 12, 10, 8, and 6 when we landed in Berlin. And it's an interesting thing. Tammy and I, part of the reason we went 7 years without going on a date is we were each in an international phase of our careers in different countries. Each of us said, when we met, fell in love, got married, that we had an extraordinary experience living internationally, which really makes you appreciate America even more when you put it in the context of a global perspective. But boy, wouldn't we have been better to have done that as kids? And so we said, you know what? We're not sure how, where, when, but we're going to try to find a way to get our kids international exposure living overseas when they're young, ever knowing that that's not who Barack Obama was, or that he'd become the president, or that he would ask me, in my case, to return to Germany. I had been a banker in Germany, and it was transformative for all of us, including our kids. Sam, our youngest, was a little bit on the young side. So 6 when he arrived, almost 10 when we left. He probably had a little less of the experience, but even he will tell you it was exceptional. They all speak fluent German.
Wow.
They're huge soccer. They were players and now huge, knowledgeable soccer fans. They've got friends on both sides of the Atlantic. Transformational. Anyone watching, if you get the chance to go overseas with your kids when they're young, just sign up and do it.
Yeah, I raised my kids part of the time in Israel where we lived.
I was going to make that point. You would know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, and during the time there were challenges, but it did bring our kids closer together, which was really important. But it also, they look back and they have so much, and they speak the language, and they feel so comfortable, and they appreciate America very much, and yet they have the passion for another country. So I think it's beautiful.
Same with us, and I should have said that. It's never a straight line. That does not say that it wasn't without bumps. But there was a feeling in our family, and we haven't had it before, a sense that we're a close family. It's basically, we're all of this together. It's us against the world. It was a real intimacy that was really special.
Yeah, I like that. Okay, so now switching a little about advice. So I always like to ask leaders, what's the worst advice you've ever received? What is the best advice?
Well, it's funny. Worst advice and best advice were each from the experience of going overseas, but not when I became ambassador, but the first time when I worked overseas with Goldman Sachs.
Right.
I had a divided group of advisors, mentors, family members, friends, literally 50-50. And at this point, I'm single. You should go, you shouldn't go.
Right.
Thank God I listened to the you should go, including my own inner self, because the you shouldn't go group was just so wrong. And in fairness to them, I'm not sure they knew how wrong they were, but they were wrong. And the notion of speaking a second language, living in a different country, as I mentioned a minute ago, looking at the United States from a different perspective, which I think elevates our country for so many reasons, it was the right decision. And I think back, and by the way, the folks who said don't go were smart, savvy folks. These were not, folks who I just met on the street. These are people who knew me intimately. They were talented, and they came down on the wrong side. Thank God I didn't listen to them.
Right. And then my last question of that about the advice, and you just gave it, is what's the best advice you give to people? And basically you just said it, which is go out and live and take a chance and
I
try
think
something new.
that's right, Liz. Take risks. Obviously, you don't want to take risks that where you put your life in danger and put that kind of risk aside. But if it's a promotion into a job that you're not quite feeling comfortable with, you know what? Go that route. Or if it's a relocation, take that shot.
I
It's
get it. And I always say to my kids, and I think we say to young people, it's like, these are the years to make mistakes, try things, and see what works and see what you're passionate really about.
amen to all.
Yeah. Okay. So now I'm going to do rapid questions. They're one word. You can expand, but they're just fun ones for people to get to know who Phil is.
Okay.
Favorite sound?
Well, let me take the alarm clock in the morning off the list. Let me
Yeah.
just put that aside.
Yeah.
I think the sound of any voice in my family. I love my family and I love being with them.
That's great. Favorite color?
Probably blue. I won't get into why because we're no politics on the show, but probably
Okay.
blue.
Okay.
And by the way, the color blue these days is quite blue.
It's blue. It's blue. I got it. Favorite scent or smell?
My wife is a skin creamaholic. She comes up with the best skin creams, and I don't know where the heck she is. She's got some recently that she got as a gift from someone in England, but my wife has this down to a science, so that's what I'm going to say.
Okay, good. You talked about growing up in Massachusetts and you live in New Jersey. What are your favorite sports teams?
Yeah, so that's complicated in New Jersey, but it's a fact. The Boston Red Sox, Boston Celtics, New England Patriots. But the big one, we own a chunk of the women's pro soccer team in New York, New Jersey called FC Gotham. And that would be at the top of the list for us.
Amazing, amazing. Okay. And just as a side plug, I mean, World Cup is going to be in New Jersey in a couple of years. So you really are.
So we are blessed. We pitched FIFA alongside our partners in New York City, and we're quite close to New York City. And we won the right to host 8 games, including the World Cup final, July 19th, 2026, which is a huge deal. They also have given us the final for next year's first ever World Club Cup, which is also exciting. So we're going to be soccer central for the next couple of years.
I love it. I love it. Okay. Going back to like more domestic, favorite dog. Are you a dog or are you a cat person?
Yeah, I'm allergic to cats, so the answer is dog. And we've had only 2 types of Briards, which are French sheepdogs. And most recently, we picked up a couple of years ago a Beagle. So those are the 2 brands that we've had.
What's the name of the beagle?
So the Briard is Lulu, and the Beagle is Morty, as in Rick and Morty.
Okay. Okay. Favorite meal?
Wow. So I would say we love Italy, and we have a little place there in the country. And the favorite meal would be home-cooked pizza in Italy with a nice glass of some kind of local white wine. That combination is deadly.
Sounds perfect. Favorite music?
Yeah, so that's what I thought you meant earlier. I'm all over the place. As I mentioned, I was in musical theater as a kid. So I'm somebody who can get slotted into a whole range of lanes. My hip hop interests are fairly narrow to mostly guys in the business who we know. But at the end of the day, I would land on rock and roll. We've got John Bon Jovi, Bruce Springsteen. New Jersey's got rock legends up and down our arms. So I'd land on rock and roll.
Sounds good. Sounds good. Do you have time to read books besides?
I do.
What book have you read in the last few years that you think is just a great book?
So I read only nonfiction, and I just, by the way, this is not the answer to your question. I just started Cher's memoir. I'm a big Cher fan, speaking of music. She lived a crazy life, by the way. Her grandmother, by the way, gave birth to her mother when the grandmother was 13.
Wow.
How about that? The favorite of the past number of years, Eric Larson is a guy who I love. In his book called The Splendid and the Vile, which is about the early years in World War II when Churchill was trying to hold everything together. Huge lesson in how you lead through adversity. And Liz, I read that in the darkest days, complete coincidence, of the early days of the pandemic. And I was trying to summon as much strength as I could to lead the state. And you
Right.
probably know New York City and New Jersey were hit the first and hardest in those early days. And that book was inspirational.
That's great. I mean, it's not great. It's great because you had something, and that's what reading is. Reading is usually a roadmap for something personal or professional.
You
For
bet.
me, yeah. Okay. Last few questions. What is your superpower? Phil Murphy's superpower.
Oh my Lord. I'm not sure I'm necessarily, you use the word, which with humility, I would say I'm at least in the discussion, and that would be empathy.
Yeah.
I got that. Both of my folks were wonderful people. My dad was a guy, I already gave you his biography, but he was the guy who gave a buck to the guy at church who couldn't afford the collection, gave a ride to somebody who couldn't afford a ride. And I hope in some small way, and by the way, back to the pandemic, one of the decisions that I made early on is that we would not just every day do our press conference and talk about the numbers, but we would eulogize essentially three people at each one of these press conferences. I would call each of the families beforehand. That taught me an enormous amount of lessons. As you can imagine, you're speaking to people in their darkest moments, and that was a powerful impact on me. So I guess I would say I can, as a friend of yours and mine used to say, I could feel your pain.
Yeah. Yeah. What I've learned and what I also do in my life and my personal life and what I do professionally is really try to feel like the humans, names, their stories. And that's why I'm here, because at the end, I do believe there's more people in our world that just want connection. And if they hear from you and they hear that you're Irish, or that your father didn't finish school, or you took your kids across the world, I think people can relate to so many of these things. And the goal is to figure out how we can relate so we can actually respect and be kind to each other.
I should have said this up front. It's why I not only love you, but I love the concept of this podcast. The heart part of it, especially. Like, it's a really cool premise.
Thank you. Thank you. So my last question, which continues on that one, that I've asked everybody, and this is the greatest part. You can not like somebody politically, you can love them politically. If I told you their answers to this question, you wouldn't know what party they came from, what state they came from. So that's the beauty here. So here you go. What brings you joy? What brings Phil Murphy joy? And how do you share your joy with others?
I think Liz, I got to go back to family. When we are hitting on all cylinders, when we're together in a positive experience, we're getting along. We're like any family. We argue and, cry and all that sort of stuff. But when it's working, there's nothing better. There's nothing like it. And you want it to be like that all of the time. And how do I show my joy? I mean, I'm in a great mood. I'm excited. I'm alert. I'm present. We just spent a bunch of days together around Christmas in warm weather, playing some sports, eating meals, having trivia contests while we're having our dinner. The six of us, when we're in the swing together in a good rhythm, there's nothing like it in the world.
I'm going to end on that. It's beautiful. And I hope for people to hear that. And I hope that so many of our listeners and so many people watching also have that in their lives, because there is nothing better than family and being together. So on that note, I know you have a lot to go and do. You have a busy agenda. You have a busy state. And I just want to say thank you and my regards and my love to you and to Tammy. And thank you for taking time to share your story with everyone.
Liz, I can't thank you enough. This has been a really cool, fun half an hour. I love you, as you know, for many years. And I think, as I mentioned a minute ago, the concept here is a home run, particularly at a time in our country and world where we're all at each other's throats. To come together like this is really, really special. And thank you for having me.
Pleasure. Hi, it's Liz. Please join me every Tuesday for coffee to talk about heart and humanity with our elected leaders. Remember to hit subscribe to get an alert when a new episode is live and for exclusive content. Ciao!